Okay, so now you've had a look at the ground rules, let's talk about what is entrepreneurship anyway. Who do you think of when you hear the word entrepreneur? Chances are one of these people comes to mind. In case you don't recognise them all, here we have Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group, Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, and Oprah Winfrey, founder of the brand Oprah Winfrey and a whole lot of things that go with it. Now, this last one you might not be so sure of, so let's take a closer look at what's behind him. You might not recognise the face, but chances are that you recognise at least one of these brands. Tesla, electric cars, has become pretty well known. This is Elon Musk. Before founding Tesla, he also founded PayPal, or invested in it anyway. Entrepreneur hasn't always been viewed favourably. In the 1980s in Australia, there were some people who called themselves entrepreneurs and in fact were feted by the press as entrepreneurs until things started to go wrong. These are two gentlemen whose names would have come to mind in the 1980s when you mentioned the word entrepreneur. Christopher Skase made a lot of money in media and those sorts of industries and fled the country to avoid being charged. Alan Bond at least stayed to face his charges and ended up in jail. The thing that made these false entrepreneurs is that they didn't actually create anything of value. What they did was they took existing organisations, stripped the value out of them and kept it for themselves. So nobody except the entrepreneurs ended up better off. So I wouldn't call these entrepreneurs, I'd call them speculators and exploiters. However, that's the term they used for themselves. And so for a while, entrepreneur was a dirty word in Australia. And entrepreneurship was not a label we wanted to attach to our education. Fortunately, things have changed. Typical entrepreneur. Sorry guys, there's no such thing. They come in all shapes and sizes, and that's actually good news because as you look around the class, you'll see that you are all different, which means that none of you are excluded from the possibility of being an entrepreneur. Definitions. There's all sorts of definitions. So Wikipedia is a good way of finding out what the average person is going to think of as the meaning for a word. So what does it say about entrepreneurs? An entrepreneur is a person who has possession of a new enterprise, venture or idea, assumes significant accountability for the inherent risks and the outcome. He or she is an ambitious leader who combines land, labour and capital, otherwise known as resources, to often create and market new goods or services. There's a few assumptions in there. There's a pretty significant assumption that involves a new enterprise or venture. It also suggests an idea could be something that an entrepreneur does, and we'll tell you that that's not the whole thing. So let's have a look at a scholarly definition. This is one we'll keep on using. It comes from Howard Stevenson, who's a Harvard professor, and entrepreneurship is defined as the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. And if you're interested in following this up, you can actually click on the link here and find a blog which explains why it's such a good definition of entrepreneurship. Now, there are some key words in this definition. Let's talk about them. First of all, this idea of pursuit. You chase after something, you go after a dream. You pursue it with passion, you believe in the idea, you never give up. That's important in entrepreneurship. You have to be a little bit obsessive to actually get there. It talks about opportunity, not ideas. An opportunity is more than an idea, and we will talk a lot about what the difference is as you go through this subject. And finally, without regard to resources currently controlled. So this is one of the reasons why entrepreneurs need to be good at working in teams. If you don't control the resources, but you need to use them, you have to be able to negotiate with whoever does control those resources to let you use them. You have to be able to explain why it's in their interests as well as your own. So you leverage scarce resources from others who do have them. What I would say is that entrepreneurship is more an approach for life than a way of starting a business. It's an approach to problems that seeks to apply leverage and create value. By what I mean is you use what you know, and who you are to actually identify solutions to problems that create value for other people as well as for yourself. And we'll come back to that. It's not just about money. It can be applied in many contexts, and some of them are listed here. So, corporate entrepreneurship, think of existing well-established businesses that are constantly doing new things, breaking new ground. Apple, Google, Amazon spring to mind here. But it doesn't have to be about purely commercial business. Organizations with a social mission can be entrepreneurial as well. Think of the Thank You Group. Some of you may have been drinking Thank You water. They donate a portion of their profits to charity. Grameen Bank, if you haven't heard of that, look them up. It's one of the biggest social enterprises in the world. It provides microfinance, very small loans, to people who would not otherwise be able to get a bank loan. It's been going for about 3 decades now, and it's very, very successful. Charities can be entrepreneurial. Not all charities are, but some of them are very entrepreneurial. Brotherhood of St. Lawrence is an example of one in Australia that has gone beyond donations and actually started founding small not-for-profit ventures that actually create funds that go back into their charity work. There's the good old-fashioned idea of a startup, and I'm sure that's what most of you will be thinking of, and that's absolutely fine. That's usually where you get started. Technology entrepreneurship. Inventors can be entrepreneurs. Many inventors aren't. Examples of technology entrepreneurship would be Tesla, I mentioned before. That's very much based on technology. So there's a lot of research and development to be done to actually create the product before you can take it to market. Another example of technology entrepreneurship could be Dyson, who started by creating vacuum cleaners and are now into the hand dryers that you'll see in virtually every airport toilet around Australia and in other countries, I might add. Now, Dyson is a rare example of a really top inventor who actually was able to take his inventions to market. And we'll talk about why that isn't always the case. It can also be in politics. There's a film out at the moment about the suffragette movement. Think of them. These were people who employed entrepreneurial techniques to actually get their point across. Gandhi, who led to the independence of India, another good example. And for your own personal goals, if you think entrepreneurially, you will find ways to achieve the goals that you've set yourself without being constrained by, if you like, the conventional way of doing things. Why is entrepreneurship important? Well, it can create a lot of benefit for a lot of people. It is the basis of strong economies. US we always think of. We're perhaps less likely to think of China and India, but if you look at those countries, and those of you who come from those countries will know there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity happening there. Entrepreneurial firms create jobs. Entrepreneurial firms are the ones that are growing the fastest and therefore are hiring people. They also create new industries. Amazon was the first to challenge the idea that you had to go into a bookshop to buy books. They saw that you could provide a much wider range online and more conveniently. eBay was the first to think of using the new technology of the internet to connect buyers and sellers without having to go through stores or classified ads. PayPal was the first to challenge the way that banks controlled payments online. Kickstarter, it was an early example of crowdfunding, where you can raise money for an idea by getting lots of people to put a small amount in it and you offer them a small reward in return. It's now used quite frequently as a way of getting businesses off the ground. Entrepreneurship encourages innovation because entrepreneurship uses the output of innovation to make a product or service that you can actually sell to people or get people to invest in some other way. And it can create solutions to local and global problems. It's no coincidence that the people who are doing the most leading edge work in environmental sustainability and creating solutions to energy that doesn't depend on fossil fuel are entrepreneurs. So, by now I hope you're getting the idea that entrepreneurship is quite diverse and there's something in it for everyone. So, what I'd like to hear from you guys is what interests you about entrepreneurship, knowing what you do now or what you've known before. You can earn some participation points by writing a blog about this, and you'll find a link to the blog after this video on Blackboard. I look forward to reading what you have to say.